For 3 long years, from the day we said, I do, to the day we called it quits, my husband, the celebrated painter Julian, never once picked up a brush to paint me. Then Julian and I got back together. I stopped pestering him to let me into a studio. I stopped caring what time he came home. Even when Chloe showed up at our place to model, I helped him find the perfect excuse. I get it, Julian. It's art. Julian froze. He grabbed my wrist, his gaze piercing through my face, searching for something. Julian's face was grim. He explained impatiently. She's just here to model. Only with her can I find inspiration. Her clothes got wet, so I gave her a clean shirt. As he spoke, he pulled Chloe behind him, his eyes filled with irritation and defensiveness. What we have is a purely artistic relationship, nothing dirty like you're imagining. I glanced at Chloe, cowering behind him. The girl wore Julian's shirt. Its hem barely grazed her thighs, exposing long, slender legs. Seeing my silence, Chloe's eyes welled up with tears. Hazel, please don't fight with Julian because of me. Maybe I shouldn't come next time. I cut her off, my voice calm. I understand completely. It's art, after all. I'm not angry. Julian's expression froze. He stared blankly for a long moment, then fixed his gaze on my face, as if trying to drill a hole right through me. Then why are you dragging a suitcase the moment you walk in? You always used to threaten to leave home when we fought. How long will you disappear this time? Huh? I looked up confused. Julian's eyes were slightly red, and there was a hint of a choked sob in his voice, completely catching me off guard. Right. He'd vanish into a studio with Chloe for days, sometimes even nights. Fearing I'd disturb his artistic flow, I hadn't told him about my business trip. So Julian hadn't even noticed I'd been gone for a whole week. I pushed my suitcase inside, explaining calmly. I'm dragging my suitcase because I just got back from a business trip. Julian's tightly furrowed brow finally relaxed. I glanced at the bedroom. It was practically bursting with Chloe stuff. She finds it inconvenient to travel back and forth, so I let her stay here temporarily. Julian touched his nose, a bit awkwardly. I nodded, wheeling my luggage into the guest room. Oh, and I'm working late tonight. I won't be back. I consciously created a quiet environment for them. With that, I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Julian suddenly grabbed my hand. You always wanted me to paint your portrait. I'll do it once the exhibition is over. It'll be your birthday gift. His confident tone held a hint of arrogant condescension. Julian was so sure I'd love it. After all, for those 3 years we were married, I was constantly begging him to paint my portrait. But he always refused, saying, I only paint landscapes, not portraits. Until later, when I accidentally stumbled into a studio and saw beautiful, framed paintings all of the same person. His former lover, Chloe. Young and foolish back then, I deliberately challenged him. I made him choose between breaking up with me or getting rid of the paintings. Clearly, I lost that gamble. Julian didn't hesitate for a second, choosing the latter. He was so calm, so cruelly calm, cruelly telling me that I was just a stranger in his life. And that relationship ended with me sobbing and demanding a divorce. After we separated, I was heartbroken for half a year, barely able to function. But now, mentioning it brought only indifference and calm. Time truly is a strange thing. You should get back to your work. Chloe is waiting. I gently pulled my hand from his grip, my voice as flat as if I were commenting on the weather. Julian finally let go. 02. To finish the project, I worked nonstop for a solid week. Late one night, Julian's message popped up. I have something more important tonight. I'll make up for your birthday later, promise. I wasn't surprised at all. Last year, for my birthday, one call from Chloe, and he dumped me to fly halfway across the world to watch the sunrise with her. The year before, he was hosting an exhibition overseas, with Chloe as his star model. What was I doing back then? I cooked a feast, a whole table overflowing with dishes, waiting from dawn till dusk, then from dusk till dawn again. It wasn't until I saw the two of them, looking perfectly matched, splashed across the news headlines that I realized my husband, whom I'd been with for years, actually could paint portraits. His brush, however, moved only for Chloe. Chloe was his sole muse. Back then, blinded by jealousy and a crushing sense of betrayal, I barraged him with calls. Finally, he picked up. On my end of the line, furious accusations. On his end, a tired, dismissive tone. Hazel, you're not a child. Can you stop being so childish? But I refused to give up, still foolishly determined to demand an answer. Julian, tell me, who's more important, me or Chloe? There was a long silence on the other end, so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then I heard his airy reply. Stop this nonsense. Fine. Then I'll burn those paintings. Julian, usually so composed, lost it. His voice flared with anger and panic. Hazel, you wouldn't dare? Oh, I would. After throwing out the threat, I hung up, trembling. But when I stormed into a studio, hammer in hand, I stopped dead in front of the portraits. His brushstrokes, they truly held warmth. Chloe, as painted by him, was truly beautiful. Even sitting quietly, she exuded youth, vibrancy, and playfulness. Every single stroke vibrated with love. That night, I sat in his studio, sleepless, all night long, and cried the entire night. I cried until my tears ran dry, and with them, the last vestiges of love in my heart withered. 03. This time, getting back together. Julian had already told me he wasn't someone who could be tied down by emotions. He was a painter, he needed to create, and he had no time to respond to my petty emotions. I just smiled, nodding, pretending I understood perfectly. After all, I was busy now too. I had an important meeting tomorrow. I needed proper rest. Passing a dessert shop, I bought myself a small strawberry cake. I headed back to the apartment I'd owned before Julian and I ever tied the knot. As the cake melted in my mouth, I remembered Julian had celebrated my birthday with me once. But it was laughable, really. The only birthday he ever spent with me. It landed me in the hospital. He came home very late that day, carrying a cake. I was as happy as a child, not even looking closely at the packaging. Even seeing it already sliced didn't dampen my joy. It wasn't until I took a bite that I realized it was pineapple. I'm allergic to pineapple. But afraid of ruining his mood, I forced myself to swallow it. By midnight, I was covered in hives, struggling to breathe. Hooked up to an 4 drip in the hospital, Julian sat by my bed and apologized. Sorry, I must have misremembered. Back then, I didn't probe what misremembered actually meant. Later, I found out. The cake he brought back that night? It was Chloe's leftovers. He hadn't even remembered my birthday, he'd just seen my excitement and, too lazy to deal with it, hadn't bothered to deny anything. Pineapple cake, that was always Chloe's favorite, never mine. Blowing out the candles, I silently made a wish. Before, every single wish was about him. I hoped he'd spend a little more time with me. I hoped he'd paint a portrait of me. I hoped he'd love me just a little. But this time, my wish was only for myself. I hoped I could work hard, live well, and never again be sad over someone who wasn't worth it. After making my wish, I took a hot shower and went to bed. 04. In the middle of the night, I was woken by a frantic ringtone. It was Mark, Julian's best friend, the one who used to mock me for being an idiot. Hazel, Julian got into a fight, his right hand got sliced. Get to the hospital. Fast. His voice was urgent. After a moment, he added hesitantly. It was for Chloe. Hazel, please don't be mad. I replied. Got it. The person on the other end paused. Hazel, you dash. He hadn't finished speaking before I hung up. I felt nothing. Just annoyance at having my sleep interrupted. I slowly, deliberately got dressed before heading out. In the past, I actually valued his hands more than he did. Knowing he needed them for painting, I never let him cook. Afraid of him getting cold, every winter, I'd knit him gloves myself, well in advance, to keep his hands warm. If he accidentally got a paper cut, I'd fuss over it for ages. I still went to the hospital. Not out of worry. I just felt that, still technically back together, not showing up would be a bad look. As I reached the door of the hospital room, I overheard Julian's friends talking. Remember? 3 years ago, the night Chloe announced she was dating someone abroad, Julian went crazy, racing his car recklessly, then crashing it. But it was Chloe, wasn't it? Julian, always so cool-headed, broke all his own rules for her. You're right. Only a fool like Hazel would think Julian had any real feelings for her. Back then, when Julian crashed, Hazel risked her life protecting his hands, getting several stitches on her forehead herself. When Julian woke up, he proposed to her just to spite Chloe. Yes, I'd chased Julian for years. Since freshman year of college. He was a year ahead of me, handsome, a brilliant artist, a campus celebrity. For him, I joined the art club, brought him breakfast every day, helped him organize his art supplies. Even when he got into a car accident, I didn't hesitate to throw myself over him, protecting his hands. I thought, when he said, let's try, it meant he finally saw something good in me. I never imagined it was just a decision made out of pure spite, because Chloe had announced her relationship. Hazel. Someone spotted me. The group seemed startled, their expressions awkward. Hazel, please don't be mad. We were just kidding. That's all in the past. I didn't say much, just nodded and walked into the room. Julian lay in the hospital bed, instinctively glancing at my empty hands. As if afraid I wouldn't notice, he deliberately exposed his bandaged hand. Hazel, I got hurt. Seeing my lack of reaction, he awkwardly explained. Chloe and I grew up together. I couldn't just stand by when she was being bullied. Hazel, can you stop being so petty? Don't make a big deal out of this. I looked up at him, my gaze calm. I'm not being petty. If you're injured, see a doctor and change your dressings on time. It's your hand. I have no right to tell you what to do with it. He froze, blinking, confusion in his eyes. Then came irritation. He seemed unable to understand why I wasn't falling apart, crying anxious tears the moment I heard he was injured, like before. 05 during the stalemate. The hospital room door opened, and Chloe came in, her eyes red-rimmed. She completely bypassed me, rushing to Julian and throwing her arms around him, her voice thick with sobs. Julian, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be hurt. Julian's expression softened. He gently patted her back to comfort her. It's not your fault. I wanted to help you. Here's the bone broth I brought for you. Try it. They clung to each other, intimate as a real couple. And me? I was the awkward outsider, standing alone in the corner, utterly out of place. Julian, while comforting Chloe, kept glancing at me, as if he was watching my reaction, expecting me to react like before, jealous, angry, throwing a fit. But I just pulled out my phone and checked the time. My meeting tomorrow morning starts at 8. It's a 40-minute commute from the hospital to the office. Add in time for showering and breakfast, I'd need to be up by 6:30 a.m. So, going home to rest now seemed like the best plan. Out of the corner of my eye, Julian took the thermos, tasted the broth, and frowned. Julian, let me stay here tonight and take care of you. Perfect. I was about to say I was leaving. Julian's face darkened, and he subtly recoiled from Chloe's touch. You should go home. You've had a long day and need rest. Hazel can take care of me. Chloe paused, then nodded. After she left, silence descended on the room. Julian watched me for a long moment, then said, Hazel, I want your homemade soup. He was incredibly picky, The rich broths he used to drink, I'd spent hours in the kitchen, sometimes over a dozen, simmering them myself. The heat, the ingredients, everything had to be perfectly controlled, no room for error. The year I graduated college, I had a fantastic job offer in London, excellent pay and benefits. But he'd said, I don't want a long-distance relationship, Hazel, don't leave me. I'd abandoned it without a second thought, staying behind to revolve my life around him, catering to his every need. Every night, I'd leave a light on, waiting for him. The meals I cooked would grow cold, then I'd reheat them, only for them to cool again. Even though he rarely came home, I kept it up for 3 long years. Occasionally, he would return, but he'd only sweep his gaze over the food. Then he'd frown and ask me, are you really this idle all day? Is there nothing else for you to do but cook and wait for me? Now, I sidestepped his outstretched hand. I don't have time to cook. I have an important meeting tomorrow. I have things to do. Julian's face instantly darkened. It was the prelude to his anger. I ignored his reaction and simply walked away. 06. The meeting lasted all day. After it ended, I immediately rushed to another city for a business trip. That trip lasted half a month. On the high-speed train back, I opened my phone and saw a photo Chloe had posted on Ins. It was a selfie of her in a sheer dress, showing off her graceful figure. Behind her, Julian held a paintbrush, his expression full of focus and admiration. The caption read, Julian's back on his feet and already painting for me. I stared at the photo. My finger paused for a beat, then I casually liked it. That evening, at a dinner with clients, Julian's call came through. His voice was clearly simmering with suppressed rage. Hazel, what's with the like? Are you deliberately pretending not to care, but secretly fuming inside? Listening to his baseless accusations, I ignored him and hung up. Soon, his messages started flooding in, one after another. Chloe just got back and needs a signature piece to establish herself in the market. That's why I rushed to paint for her. My hand injury has healed, don't worry. Hazel, I haven't had a proper meal in half a month. When are you coming back to cook for me? What do I care if his hand is okay? And he's a grown man. Is he going to starve to death? The messages kept coming. My client reminded me, Ms. Evans, if it's urgent, please take the call. I walked to the hallway. The moment I dialed, he picked up instantly. Hazel, don't you check your phone? That familiar arrogant tone, laced with accusation. I rubbed my temples. Julian, I thought we agreed when we got back together not to interfere too much with each other's lives, didn't we? I'm busy with work right now. Can you stop flooding me with messages? Are you really that idle? There was a long silence on the other end. Then came a smash, like a phone being thrown to the ground followed by a dial tone. I got home late that night. The moment I reached the entrance, from the darkness, a pair of strong hands wrapped around my waist. The next second, I was pulled into a warm embrace. Hazel, what's the meaning of you not coming home day after day? The lingering scent of tobacco made me cough lightly. I hated the smell of smoke, but after years together, Julian had never bothered to change. Yet for Chloe, he'd not only shower but change into freshly ironed clothes. Lost in thought, a sharp pain flared on my lips. Julian squeezed my lips, his voice muffled. I missed you so much. I forcefully pushed him away. The air hung in silent tension. I immediately closed the door. The moment the door clicked shut, the hallway light flickered on, illuminating those eyes that once mesmerized me completely. But now, those dark eyes were filled with suppressed hurt and anger. 07. The next week was surprisingly much quieter. I knew Julian wouldn't back down. I knew he was waiting for me to give in, to soften. News of him attending upscale galas with Chloe kept trending online. He proudly declared her presence to the whole world. I thought back to the 3 years we were secretly married and just found it laughable. During lunch break, the younger girls at the office were excitedly gossiping. So sweet. The painter and his muse, the one who brings him inspiration, they're just perfect together. I bet Chloe is the wife that famous painter married in secret, then divorced. All that drama, and they ended up together after all. Seeing me approach, one of the girls asked, Ms. Evans, I'd like to take Friday off. My favorite painter is having an exhibition. I nodded. After lunch, I suddenly felt nauseous. At the hospital, when the test results came out, I froze for a long time. I was pregnant. No surprise, no expectation. The last time Julian and I were intimate was the night before Chloe returned to the country. In the heat of the moment, he'd whispered in my ear, Hazel, let's have a baby. A baby will keep you by my side forever. I shook my head, pushing away those unrealistic fantasies from my mind. When caught in the moment, who doesn't say sweet nothings? Worse still, I'd been pregnant before, in our 2nd year of marriage. Back then, I was ecstatic, rushing home to give him a surprise. Julian was engrossed in his studio. When he saw me, he instinctively shielded his painting. Then, he glanced indifferently at the pregnancy test results. I'm focused on my career right now, not ready for a child. Get rid of it. I cried, begging him, saying I wanted to keep the baby. But he just turned away coldly, grabbing his luggage and leaving. Due to my emotional distress, I slipped in the shower that night and showed signs of a threatened miscarriage. I called him for help, but it was Chloe who answered. Julian, is this your friend? Julian simply grunted, then lowered his voice to accuse me. Hazel, are you pulling these stunts just to make Chloe aware of your existence? The pain choked off my words. Before I could even defend myself, the call was disconnected. That day, it was my neighbor who found me. At the hospital, the baby couldn't be saved. I lay in the hospital for half a month, crying every single day, blaming myself for failing to protect that tiny life. It wasn't until later, at a party, when Julian got drunk. When I went to pick him up, I overheard his conversation with someone else. Julian, are you falling for Hazel? You seem to be treating her pretty well lately. Julian chuckled, his tone lazy and casual. Fall for her? How could I? I'm not over Chloe yet. Having a child with Hazel would just complicate things too much, making a clean break impossible later. Now I was pregnant again. I decided there was no need to tell Julian. F5. We were just back together, not married. This baby's arrival was merely an accident. Rather than face an ugly scene later, it was better I make the decision myself. I barely hesitated before booking the surgery for the next day. 08. Stepping inside late that night. The first thing I saw was Chloe standing in front of Julian. Julian saw me and instantly grabbed a piece of clothing, throwing it over her. The young woman buried her head in his chest, her voice a shy murmur. Hazel, I was just modeling for Julian. I said nothing, walking straight to the bedroom to get my things. This time, when I moved out, I wasn't coming back. But I searched everywhere and couldn't find my bracelet. It was a keepsake from my mother, a relic. I always kept it safe. I couldn't be mistaken. Hazel, what are you looking for? Chloe's soft voice drifted over. I looked up. She was wearing my pajamas, leaning against the door frame. And there, in her hands, was the bracelet she was toying with. Give it back to me. I quickly walked toward her. But Chloe acted as if she'd suffered a grave injustice, biting her lip. Hazel, I just thought it was pretty, I didn't mean to take it. She reached out to hand it over. But the next second, before my fingers even grazed it, the bracelet slipped and shattered on the floor. Chloe's eyes instantly welling up, but as she leaned closer to me, her voice was laced with challenge. Hazel, in a moment, you'll see for yourself who he truly loves, me or you. Furious, I pushed her away, frantically bending to gather the broken pieces from the floor. Hazel, I'm sorry. I know you're angry. That's why you pushed me. Chloe burst into tears, sinking to the floor. Julian came upstairs and saw this exact scene. His face turned ashen. He quickly helped Chloe up and sternly chastised me. It's just a broken bracelet, isn't it? I'll buy you a new one. The fragments pierced my finger. A dense, throbbing pain spread through my heart. I stared into his eyes. Julian, you know this was my mother's heirloom. He avoided my gaze, carrying Chloe into the bedroom. As he brushed past me, he said coldly, you should move out and cool off. Don't come back for a few days. Chloe doesn't want to see you. I said, then let's break up. Julian was still rubbing Chloe's foot. His back was to me, and his posture stiffened for a moment. Whatever you want. I carefully packed my ID and the bracelet fragments, and turned to walk downstairs. As I left, there was a painting in the living room. The girl in the portrait wore a ruby necklace. I had one just like it. Except, hers was custom-made for Chloe. Mine was just an afterthought, given on a whim. The painting wasn't finished, the facial features unetched. But it didn't matter to me whose portrait it was anymore. I placed the keys on the console by the door, and quietly closed it behind me. 09. The moment the downstairs door closed. The sound was barely a whisper, yet Julian heard it distinctly. His heart clenched with that faint click. Hazel's spiteful, words dash, then let's break up, echoed in his mind again. She'd said it so lightly, yet it carried an undeniable finality. As if she really meant she was done with him forever. Impossible. Ouch. That hurts. It wasn't until Chloe's cry of pain that Julian snapped back to reality. He realized his hand, resting on Chloe's ankle, had inadvertently squeezed too hard. What's wrong, Julian? Chloe asked, feigning concern. Julian had already regained his usual composure. He said no more, simply bent down and scooped Chloe into his arms. Where are we going? Chloe buried her head in his chest, her voice tinged with shyness. The next second, she heard Julian say, I'm taking you to the guest room to rest. He explained stiffly, as if trying to convince himself. She'll come back eventually. This room can't be touched. Julian stared at the necklace still lying on the dressing table. It was the gift he'd once given Hazel. It wasn't the designer piece. Yet she cherished it so much, wearing it constantly, only taking it off deliberately to shower. Julian thought. She must have forgotten. Thinking of how important the necklace was to Hazel, he couldn't help but curve his lips into a smile. Hazel would definitely come back, and with that thought, the unease in his heart vanished completely. Chloe leaned against him, a flicker of dissatisfaction in her eyes, but her voice remained soft. Julian, you're so good to me. Julian placed her on the bed, turning to call a family doctor, but Chloe tugged at his sleeve. Don't bother, just stay with me. She looked up at him, her gaze full of dependence. Julian absently grunted, but inexplicably, his mind drifted to Hazel's hand, cut by the bracelet fragments just moments ago. So, when Chloe leaned in, he immediately pulled away. He turned, politely closed the door, and said, get some rest. That night, Julian lay in bed. The emptiness beside him was a stark reminder that Hazel was gone. He tossed and turned several times, finally managing to fall asleep clutching her pillow. It still carried the faint scent of Hazel. The next day, in the studio, Chloe walked in wearing a silk slip, and without hesitation, shed her clothes. She stood before the easel, striking the pose he'd always loved most. Julian, let's continue. I'm ready. Julian held his brush, but hesitated, unable to make the first stroke. The outlines of the body on the canvas were already complete, the ruby necklace around her neck gleaming. But where Chloe's feature should have been, it was like a mist had settled. He stared at the blank space, and what repeatedly surfaced in his mind were Hazel's calm, yet utterly resolute eyes as she turned away last night. The slight flat curve of her lips when she spoke, the clear gaze in her eyes after all traces of love had vanished.
Al.
Even the stubborn way she hadn't shed a single tear when her finger was pricked by the bracelet fragments, it was all as vivid as if she were standing right before him. His brush tip moved, uncontrollably, outlining, filling in. Every stroke flowed with an unprecedented ease. By the time he came back to himself, the girl on the canvas had a complete face. It was Hazel's face. A faint detachment in her eyes, yet more vibrant than ever before. Julian, what are you doing? Chloe's furious question rang out. Staring at the face on the canvas, a face utterly unrelated to her own, Chloe's expression turned ugly. She abruptly raised her hand, intending to shove the easel over.
X. F4.
F5. Her former fragility vanished entirely, replaced by a monstrous rage. I'm your muse. Why are you painting her? Have you forgotten who's been in your heart all these years? Julian instinctively reached out to stop her. Looking at this furious woman, a strange sense of unfamiliarity welled up within him. The Chloe in his memory was gentle, pure, untouched like moonlight, but the jealousy and madness in her eyes now were so sharp they made him deeply uncomfortable. Chloe sensed his distance and reined in her emotions instantly. She bit her lip, her eyes brimming with tears, slowly approaching him. Then she reached up, wrapping her arms around his neck, her soft lips eagerly closing in. Julian, I'm sorry, I just love you too much. I'm terrified of losing you. I've been scared since I was a teenager. The warm touch landed on his lips, but Julian abruptly turned his head away. Chloe's lips brushed his cheek, leaving an awkward, clinging sensation. It should have been the most intimate moment with Chloe. But Hazel's voice suddenly roared in his mind. He remembered her cautious plea, could you paint a portrait of me, and the hopeful anticipation in her voice. He remembered the tremor in her voice when she found a studio filled with Chloe's portraits. He remembered the despair hidden beneath the calm when she finally said, then let's break up. Julian's heart was gripped, a bitter, aching pain. Get dressed. Julian calmly pushed away her arms from his neck. Chloe froze. Julian, she looked at him tearfully, trying to charm him. That trick always worked. But this time, Julian said, this painting isn't for you. He no longer looked at her. I'll have my driver take you home. You can't do this to me. Chloe's voice was tearful. We grew up together. You promised you'd always capture me with your brush, only me.
10.
Julian looked at Chloe's red-rimmed eyes, and memories of their long-standing connection surfaced. He raised a hand to rub his temples, his tone finally softening a bit. Don't cry. I was too harsh just now. His gaze fell on Hazel's features on the canvas, his Adam's apple bobbed. This painting was just a quick sketch, something I planned to show her privately, to fulfill her old wish. For your exhibition, of course, I'll paint a new portrait especially for you more exquisite, perfectly capturing your essence. Everyone will know that you are my one and only muse. He offered the promise freely. Chloe's tears turned to a smile. She linked her arm through his and swayed. I knew you cared about me most, Julian. So, will you drive me home yourself? My foot still hurts a little. I don't want to take the driver's car. Julian hesitated for a moment. He had originally intended to go find Hazel. Where else could she go, running off by herself, other than that small apartment? But he figured it wouldn't take long. Once he groveled and apologized, they'd be back together anyway. With that thought, he nodded and agreed. Okay, I'll drive you. As they both got into the car, my surgery appointment notification was successfully sent. The phone screen lit up and the recipient's number was, conspicuously, Julian's. Once, when I was injured, he booked a doctor's appointment for me, saying I was too careless and might miss it, so he put his own number down. After that, I'd forgotten to change the hospital's contact number back. Julian had just started the car when his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. St. Jude's Hospital. Ms. Hazel Evans, your scheduled procedure is confirmed for tonight at 10:30 p.m. Please arrive 30 minutes early for check-in. What the hell? He frowned and tapped it open, then, after reading it, scoffed. He tossed it casually onto the passenger seat. These scam texts are getting ridiculous. Chloe, curious, picked up the phone and read it, her face falling, then a hint of calculated scheming played on her lips. It must be Hazel, Julian. She just can't stand to see us happy, so she's trying to manipulate you into coming back this way. Don't fall for her tricks. Julian also found it absurd. Yet, for some reason, an inexplicable tightness seized his chest. He was silent for a few seconds, then picked up his phone and called the hospital's official number. Once connected, he gave Hazel's name and patient details, his voice tinged with a panic he didn't even realize was there. Does she have a surgery scheduled for today? The nurse on the other end verified the information and clearly responded. Yes, Ms. Hazel Evans has a procedure scheduled for 10:30 p.m. She arrived half an hour ago and has already been taken to the operating room. Wham! Julian's mind went blank. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. His face, which had been gentle with Chloe moments before, instantly turned ashen. An abortion. Hazel was pregnant? He remembered, the night before Chloe returned, when he'd whispered, let's have a baby, in Hazel's ear during their passionate moment. He remembered her silent profile then. She didn't want this baby. She was even taking matters into her own hands, without telling him, to get rid of it. His heart felt like an invisible hand was squeezing it, an agonizing pain that almost took his breath away. Julian, what's wrong? Chloe asked, noticing his distress. Julian didn't answer, slamming on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt at the side of the road. He turned to Chloe, his voice icy. Get a cab back yourself. I'm going to the hospital. She doesn't want to see you. What are you saying? Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief. Julian, you can't do this to me for her. It's so dark, and we're in the middle of nowhere, didn't we say dash? Enough. Julian cut her off, his voice a suppressed roar. Get out. Chloe wanted to argue, but seeing the panic and urgency in Julian's eyes, a look she'd never witnessed before, she finally didn't dare to cling on any longer. Reluctantly, she pushed open the car door. The moment she exited the car, it sped off towards the hospital. Julian gripped the steering wheel, his hands trembling uncontrollably. He had never been so terrified. He prayed silently, countless times. Asterisk Hazel, please just wait for me. Asterisk 11. When I opened my eyes, my vision slowly shifted from blurry to clear. You're finally awake? I turned my head, my gaze meeting Julian's bloodshot eyes. His usually perfectly styled hair was now a mess. I hadn't answered yet. Julian had already seized my hand, his face etched with unconcealed breakdown and confusion. Why? Hazel, why did you terminate the pregnancy? That was my child too. I struggled to pull my hand free, but he tightened his grip even more, until his grip accidentally snagged the foreline, and blood flowed back into the tubing. Julian immediately released me. Air rushed into my nostrils, and I spoke, my voice raspy. Because we broke up. Broke up? His eyes grew even redder. You were clearly just saying that out of anger. I thought you'd cool off for a few days and come back. I never agreed to a breakup. I looked at his distraught face, finding it only strange. Julian, I wasn't saying that out of anger. I spoke slowly, each word firm and absolute. These past 6 months of being back together, I was just undergoing desensitization therapy. I loved you so much before that I lost myself. Even my breath revolved around you. Now, I just wanted to slowly break free from my obsession with you. He froze, the collapse on his face instantly solidifying. Desensitization therapy? Are you kidding me? Hazel, all these years we've had, and these past 6 months back with me in your eyes, it was just therapy. Yes. I looked him squarely in the eye. The therapy is over now. I don't love you anymore. Completely. Impossible. He shook his head violently, his voice desperate, as if trying to convince someone else and himself. You're just still mad at me. Mad that I neglected you before. Mad that I protected Chloe. I'm sorry, Hazel, I apologize. He suddenly bent his knees, kneeling before me. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have forgotten your birthday. Shouldn't have let you eat Chloe's leftover cake. Shouldn't have told you to terminate your pregnancy. Shouldn't have put you through so much pain. Please give me another chance. We can be good together from now on. We can have more children, okay? His apology came too late. Far too late. The man kneeling before me now was utterly humbled. But the man who coldly told me to get rid of our baby in his studio was also him. The man who abandoned me to fly to Canada for Chloe overnight was also him. The man who said I was just an insignificant stranger? That was him too. Do you remember? I asked softly. When we first got together, we watched an old movie. I told you, my partner had to be faithful. If he ever fell for someone else, I'd leave immediately, and my love would be completely withdrawn, not a trace left. Julian's body stiffened, as if recalling. You held me and said, I mimicked his tone from back then, repeating it flatly. Hazel, I'll only ever love you in this life. But that was nothing more than a casual lie. He opened his mouth, trying to speak. I immediately cut him off. See? You broke that promise long ago. My love, it was already withdrawn each time you chose Chloe over me. 12. For the next few days, Julian stayed glued to my hospital room. He stopped mentioning getting back together, stopped apologizing. He just sat by my bed, silently drawing something in a small sketchbook with a pencil. He drew intently. Occasionally, he'd look up at me, his eyes full of cautious expectation, as if hoping for a smile, or even just a fleeting glance from me. But I gave him nothing. Each time, I offered only a cool, indifferent expression. On the third day, Julian finally put away his sketchbook. He couldn't draw anymore. Every stroke felt like a slow torment to his heart. My weak, post-procedure face was a constant reminder that he was responsible for all of this. The day I was discharged, Julian took it upon himself to come pick me up. He held a large bouquet of white roses, once my favorite flowers. But now I only found them an eyesore. I'll drive you back to the office, he said cautiously. I didn't refuse, nor did I speak. I just got into his car in silence. Arguing or pushing him away would only waste my time. A free ride wasn't bad. I just wanted to get home and rest. 13. Half a month later, fully recovered, I returned to work. Julian, however, seemed like a changed man. Every day, he'd be punctually waiting downstairs at the office, carrying my favorite desserts and exquisitely wrapped gifts. No matter how coldly I treated him, he always greeted me with a smile. Hazel, I'll take you home. Gradually, my colleagues' glances turned inquisitive and curious. They couldn't understand why I was rejecting such a handsome, wealthy, and seemingly devoted boyfriend. But I simply ignored them, offering no explanations. After all, he was just a transient figure in my life, no need for introductions. Right now, seeing him standing by his luxury car, I only felt irritation. I'd almost forgotten that, once upon a time, what I'd yearned for most was for him to pick me up after work. Back then, the streetlights in my rental apartment complex were dim, and I always felt scared walking alone at night. I'd called him countless times then, but his phone was always off, the excuse always the same. I need quiet to create, can't be disturbed. Yet for Chloe, one tearful Snapchat, and he'd book a red-eye flight to Canada just to watch a sunrise with her. All the companionship I'd once desperately dreamed of was finally here. But I didn't need it anymore. Julian continued to send gifts. I, however, instructed the front desk to refuse and return all of them. I never touched any of the desserts he brought. When he offered to drive me home, I always made an excuse and took a cab myself. During lunch break one day, I overheard my colleagues gossiping about Julian. Did you hear? That famous painter, Julian's, hands are completely ruined. What happened? Didn't he cherish his hands more than anything? Apparently, Chloe threw a fit and set his studio on fire. He rushed into the flames, grabbed nothing but a single painting, and ended up with severe burns on his hands. The doctors said he'll never be able to paint again. What? What will he do now? Painting was his entire life. My hand, holding the coffee cup, paused. But only for a second. No sympathy, no surprise. A few days later, Julian came to the office again. His left hand was wrapped in thick bandages, and the exposed skin showed clear, ugly burn marks, gruesome and disfigured. He took a painting from his car, his eyes holding a final sliver of hope. Hazel, look. He carefully lifted the cloth covering the painting. The full portrait was revealed. It was me. The painting was incredibly lifelike, every stroke meticulous, showing the artist's dedication. When the studio caught fire, I didn't think of anything else but saving this painting. His voice was sincere, with a hint of childish pride, like he was seeking praise. See? It's perfectly intact, not a single bit damaged. I looked at myself in the painting, then at his burned hand. Julian, my birthday is long over. The smile on his face completely froze. You promised that after your exhibition, you'd paint me a portrait as a birthday gift. But I spent that birthday alone. An expired gift, an expired painting, and expired love. I don't need any of it. His face instantly turned deathly pale, and the painting slipped from his grasp, hitting the ground with a soft thud. He opened his mouth, trying to speak, but no words came out. I clearly saw the last spark in his eyes slowly, completely extinguish. All that remained was despair. Later, I heard that Julian officially announced his retirement from the art world. He knew nothing but painting, and now he'd lost even his sole skill. As for Chloe, the moment she learned he could no longer paint, she left him without a second thought, promptly moving on with a wealthy heir. Only then did Julian finally understand that Chloe's love for him was merely for his status and fame as a painter. The lover he'd been obsessed with for so many years had never truly cared for him. 14. I started seeing a therapist regularly. His name was Ellis, gentle and professional. He helped me sort through years of pain and bitterness, guiding me out of the shadows of depression. A few months later, I walked out of his office. Ellis smiled at me and said, "Hazel, congratulations. You've completely healed." I smiled and nodded, feeling a lightness I'd never experienced before. As for Julian, I felt no guilt whatsoever. That reunion, disguised as love for him, had never been my true intention. He was the cause of all my suffering. This outcome was simply what he deserved. "I'll drive you back," Ellis said. I didn't refuse. We walked side by side, chatting and laughing. As we reached the entrance of my apartment complex, I saw a familiar figure. Julian stood beneath a distant streetlight, watching Ellis and me with complex eyes. Half his face was obscured by shadow, making his expression unreadable. After so many years together, I knew Julian too well. He clearly misunderstood our relationship, but I offered no explanation. Instead, I linked my arm through Ellis's. Julian watched us for a long time. Finally, he turned and walked away, looking dejected. Watching his retreating back, I immediately unlinked my arm from Ellis's. "I'm sorry, he's incredibly persistent, so I just used you as an excuse. To show my gratitude, let me buy you dinner." Ellis stopped, turned around, and looked at me seriously. His eyes curved into a gentle smile, reflecting my image. "Hazel, no need to apologize. Actually, it could be real." He paused, his tone sincere. "I'm willing to be your excuse indefinitely, and I'm willing to stay by your side forever." I froze, then gently shook my head. "Thank you, Dr. Reed. But no, thank you." Feelings a therapist develops for a patient might just be a fleeting illusion, not true love. I've just come out of a terrible relationship. I'm not ready to start a new one yet. Ellis didn't push it. He just nodded. He remained the same gentle, elegant man I'd first met. "I respect your decision. If you ever change your mind, you can always find me." 15. I decided to move abroad, to pick up my studies that I'd abandoned years ago due to depression. Ellis asked how long I'd be gone. I said I didn't know. Maybe a year, maybe longer. I wanted to truly settle down before coming back. Before I left, I heard one last piece of news about Julian. He had completely disappeared from the public eye. Some said they saw him, suffering from depression, living a miserable life. The once internationally renowned painter, reduced to such a fate, was indeed regrettable. Life abroad was peaceful. I re-entered campus life, attending classes, spending hours in the library. My days were full and stable. Yet, I always felt a pair of eyes, silently watching me. When returning home late, I'd sometimes hear footsteps behind me, only to turn around and find no one. Once I was being followed by a suspicious figure, and I panicked. Suddenly, a car pulled up, its headlights illuminating the path, and the person following me immediately ran off. And the broken light in the hallway, which was always fixed by the next morning, as well as the brand new umbrella left at my door on a snowy night. I knew someone was there, but I never saw who it was. I guessed it might be Ellis, but he was far away back home. I also guessed it could be someone else, but there were no clues. Eventually, I realized the person meant no harm, so I stopped trying to figure out who it was. 6 months later, Ellis came abroad for a business trip and arranged to meet me. Amidst elegant violin music, he confessed his feelings to me again in the restaurant. Hazel, I've waited 6 months for you, and I still like you. Will you give me a chance? This time, a flicker of emotion stirred within me. Okay, maybe we can try. Ellis's eyes lit up like a puppy's. That night, the snow started falling heavily. I offered to let him come home with me, to stay in the guest room. That same night, the apartment across the hall, which had always been empty, remained dark. After that night, that light never came on again, and the silent figure who had been watching over me vanished completely, as if he had never been there at all.